Hello, everyone, and welcome to another monthly wrap up. This is for the month of February. I read 20 books, so it was a pretty good reading month for me. I wanted to change up how I'm doing these a little bit. First, I just want to mention like the books I kind of feel blah about because I just don't have a lot to say with them, and I just want to get them out of the way so that I'm not like bummed out in the middle of filming this. So one of these books is City of Stardust by Georgia Summers. This was just blah. Like I know what happened in this, and also I would compare this to The Starless Sea, which I also didn't vibe with. So maybe this would be for Starless Sea fans. It's just definitely like a quieter fantasy, and I just really didn't ever end up connecting with it. So yeah, that's really all I have to say about this, but this edition's gorgeous. I'm gonna have to sell that. And then another one I just kind of was like middle of the road about was Sanctuary of Shadows. This is by Red Tower, which is the same publishing house that does Fourth Wing. So they are, I think, are gonna be like a very romantasy heavy imprint, but from what I can tell, not very well edited from any of the books I've read from them. I haven't read Assistant to the Villains yet. I might, but this one had like really great ideas and I wanted to connect to it. Also, like part of the setting is a circus. How do you make a circus? You know, like, I don't know. Anyway, I'm just expunging it from my thoughts. And then I did also give Keeper of Enchanted Rooms 3 stars. I did enjoy this one more than the other two. This one was kind of more like a cozy fantasy, which just doesn't always work for me. I think I need a little bit more stakes or a little bit more romance or like something else to connect to, because like this was nice. Like, and I would recommend this to people, especially if you love cozy fantasy, but it just, I know cozy fantasy doesn't super work for me. So, and then I also read Storm and Loving Storm by Carrie Cole, and these were just like all right. They had like a decent setup. So I've never read something like this before. They basically get snowed in during obviously a storm. Where would the snow come from? And end up getting like stuck in a car together to like wait out this storm. So they forge a connection, and then when they get out, the heroine discovers that he's a rock star. So what's not to love? It was a fun time. I listened to this while I was working and doing my little Excels, and it definitely helped pass the time, but it's just not something that I think is gonna like stand out from this year or like from this month even. So Storm and Loving Storm, just like, all right. I also read Third Sons of Charm. This was my historical romance pick from this month. And I will say, I really loved pieces of this. This was probably like a 3.5. It's just the setup, which is like he's a bodyguard and she has a crush on his cousin, and she keeps trying to like elope with his cousin, but his cousin is like trying to like use her to get her dowry because his family is like not doing well financially, but instead they have like a really good connection. And there was parts of this where I was like kicking my little feet and I was happy and giggly, but I just felt like it kind of had like these lulls where I was just like, okay. And now for the rest of them, I'm just kind of gonna go in order. So I read Bro Beast by Elsie Davis. This is kind of insane. It's about this guy whose brother is like reading an Omegaverse novel, and he kind of picks it up and is like making fun of his brother, but then he keeps reading it and he's like, wait, I like want to find out more. And then somehow he gets like transported into the world of the book, and now he's suddenly like an Omega, but he's like this big like burly guy. So he's like, there's no way I'm supposed to be like this tiny dainty little thing. So this is a very like comedic, obviously by the cover of this, it's very serious literature. I would suggest anyone of scholarly pursuits picks it up and has a good time. So this was just really fun, and it did leave a smile on my face. There are way more novellas in this series, and I think I will get to them. It's just not going to be a priority for me. This was about 4 stars. It was just like fun, goofy, and in a way that was very like self-aware of like what it was doing. It wasn't taking itself too seriously, so I like that. And then I read Hench by Natalie Zena Walscott. This was so much fun. This was just a fun, good time. If you like superheroes in movies or in books, I guess, I would check this out. So this is about a girl who, well, she's a woman, Jana. She's a woman. This woman is basically part of a temp agency for villains who like fill in like as like henchmen or like IT support. She does like data, like she inputs data for villains. She ends up getting hurt by a superhero, basically gets on a quest to like take down superheroes because she calculates how much damage they're doing to the world, and also like in calculating the cost and human lives and property damage and all of that. So it is kind of silly, while also this one does take itself seriously, but kind of in the best way. So if that at all sounds interesting to you, I would suggest you pick it up. It was just such a good time. After that, I read A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. This is amazing, 5 stars. I was so viscerally in this book. This takes place in a world that doesn't totally make sense, but basically there's this thing called the drowning, and it's kind of like this ominous thing that everyone's folk story, like legend kind of thing, where everyone says there's going to be like a second drowning. So this girl is an architecture student, but she really wanted to get into literature. And there's this author who is very like prolific and very honored. She's like obsessed with him. So when she finds out that his estate needs an architect, she signs up and sends them plans, and she gets picked to be the architect on this project. She goes down to the house, and obviously there's more than she bargained for. This is like fairy tale-esque. There's a lot of like whimsy here, while also like dealing with a little more heavy topics. And I'm really excited to pick up other things by Ava Reid, but this was just...
She never did discover that the book was upside down the whole time.
And I did a reread because I'd been having like a difficult time at work and I really needed something comforting. So I picked up a hockey romance. So I picked up Consider Me by Becca Mack. This is a typical playboy, is lost to his ways, has a lot of fans and female attention, and he's used to always getting what he wants. And of course, there's a girl who just doesn't really want to be with him because of this. Now he has to try to win over the girl he's now obsessed with. So Consider Me, it's just like fun. I will say like these characters are a tad over the top. I do think this series gets better as it goes on. I've read the first 3 that are out. It's my least favorite of the 3, but it was like comforting, and it really brought me some joy when I needed it, when work got really rough. And then I picked up Sunny Disposition by Deanna Gray. This was a fairly unique hockey romance to me. It was a college set hockey romance, and in this, the girl is like a Twitch streamer basically, and this guy is one of her mods. He ends up getting amnesia and like kind of forgetting a lot of his past, and so he really only remembers her through all of the chats that he's had with her over the years. So when she becomes his new roommate, things happen, you know? A lot of drama, a lot of stuff happening. This was just a lot of fun. I read this in line at Disneyland, so kept my attention. Then I picked up Petty Cupid by Sarah Blue. This was just like a breath of fresh air. This was very fun. This is about Cupids and like a Cupid society, almost like a paranormal-esque read where like Cupids are like real and there's a bunch of other paranormal creatures around. This is all about this Cupid who wants to be petty and get a hot date to the Valentine's Day party. And so, of course, none other than a Grimm will do. So this was just fun and silly and just a good time. They're coming out with another book in this series, and it's going to be FF. So I'm excited to also read that one. This was super quick. I read it in a day. Also read in line at Disneyland. I read Next up, I read Restore Me by J.L. Seegers. This was quite a ride. I read this in a vlog, so you can see my live reactions to it as I read it. This is a girl whose husband dies, but his best friend has secretly always had a thing for her. So it's like both of them dealing with their grief, but also like he has some guilt about having this like kind of obsession with his best friend's wife, you know, as you do. So there was a lot of drama in this. It was very like over the top. I will say the thing that this hinged on, like the thing that was supposed to really make you believe in their connection, wasn't quite there for me. I did end up giving this 4 stars. I think that might be a little generous. I do think the following books in the series I'm going to connect with even more. So I definitely don't regret picking this up. It was a good time. It's definitely a very long read, but you kind of needed it with the emotional journeys everyone's going on. And then also in the same vlog that I read, Restore Me in, I also picked up Funny Feelings by Tara DeWitt. This was so good. So this is like a comedian and her manager romance. And what I loved about this one is, one, I've never read a romance about a comedian woman before. This is their relationship. Kind of, you see them in like snippets. So you see like some past chapters and like interactions they've had. And then you have like the now where they're actually like gonna try to be together. I'd say their connection and the believability that these two people are like genuinely have feelings for each other is just so like heartwarming and, you know, soothing. I will say this does have like a miscommunication trope I didn't love, but I was obsessed with the fact that both of them went to therapy. Very much made sure to take care of their mental health. So this was definitely a unique read for me, and I really want to pick up more Tara DeWitt in the future. And then I picked up Slaying the Vampire Conqueror by Carissa Broadbent. This was fun. This is about a lady who is on a quest to kill the vampire conqueror, but of course instead she falls in love with him. So if you love romantasy, you're gonna like this one. It was just a fun, good time, a standalone. I think it takes place the same world as Carissa Broadbent's like Serpent duet. So if you've read those, I'd also read this. It's not as good as those, but it's definitely still just like a good time. And there hasn't been a Carissa Broadbent book I haven't liked. And I went on a spree of books I absolutely like loved. So I read The Kingmaker and the Rebel King by Kennedy Ryan. These are like a heavily political kind of I always say that Kennedy Ryan writes romance in a way that feels like she punches you in the chest and then you reverberate for years. So if that very vivid description interests you, I would pick up Kennedy Ryan's books. But these two, I think it worked for me because I love politics in books. I have a poli-sci degree. So I loved the discussions in this about politics. And then also I loved the love and care that Kennedy Ryan did in her research with her heroine being Native American. And you could tell that she put a lot of care into it, and she brought in like ceremonies and customs and traditions that were particular to the tribe that the heroine is from. Kennedy kind of goes on a little in the opening to tell you like who she talked with and why it was like important that these certain things be mentioned. And this does talk about how Native American women tend to go missing and people don't really put in a lot of resources into finding them. So in this, the girl is fighting against a company building a pipeline through some sacred land. And the guy in this is the son of the guy who wants to build the pipeline. So you can see that this is already contentious. And for 2 books, like I believed their connection, and I also just like really wanted them to work it out. But then of course, Kennedy Ryan is gonna 1-2 punch you all the way through. So anytime you feel like you're like, yes, I know what's going on in these, Kennedy Ryan is going to be like, surprise, here's this. And you're going to be like, thank you, ma'am. That hurt me. But it was good. And then I picked up The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. I am a big Adrienne Young fan. I've found her in the last year and a half. She's just so, she writes books in a way that just really captivate my brain. And so I ended up giving this 5 stars. This is about a lineage of women who are all cursed with basically a door is haunting them. It takes them into the past and then back to the future. The heroine in this goes back in the past and has to grapple with decisions that a past her who has walked through doors made. So it is life with a little bit of magic, a touch. But this just had a swoon-worthy romance, while also just you want to know what's going on. And then I read Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I listened to this in one sitting while I was building a house in The Sims, and this did not disappoint. Ali Hazelwood writes just such fun romances. This is a werewolf vampire romance, and you should pick it up if you just want to have a good time. The last book I read was Kim Jeong, born 1982. This is a little different than all of the other books I read. This is basically about the journey and life of this girl in South Korea and all of these tiny things that kind of build up in her life that are unfair, unjust, that are totally due to just her navigating South Korea as a woman. So there were parts of this that made me very mad. You think, okay, this is 160 pages. This will take me a day. No, no, because I was so mad, 50 pages into this, that I was I'm going to go outside and just start kicking men at random to pay for what this girl had to deal with. And it's just these little things that I think as women, we have to deal with in a society that's just wasn't made with us in mind. So this was a heavy read, but it was also a needed read. If you've heard anything about the 4B movement in South Korea, which is basically women refusing to get a husband or have kids, this kind of illustrates why they would do that. All of the prejudices and things that they have to deal with was just harrowing. And I just felt this was so powerful. I almost felt bad rating it because I rate on a scale of enjoyment, but this is just something that's so important. I gave it 5 stars, but I just feel this exists outside of my rating on enjoyment scale of reading. And I think it was just such an important read. And thank you so much for watching.